Mr. Hunt, you've spent most of your life being unavailable to the press and not speaking out in public for your views, and now you've suddenly made yourself available. Why have you chosen at this particular time to make yourself available to these questions?
Well, an effective way of answering that, I reached the point that I was afraid not to speak. Up to then, I was afraid to speak because I thought that I couldn't do a very good job, and still I don't think I do a very good job. But it reached the point that I was afraid not to speak.
Now, Lifeline is a sponsored program, and you have local sponsors, various banks, but you yourself, through HLH Foods, sponsor a great many, as many as 50 or 60%, isn't it, of the Lifeline
I don't know
programs?
what percent, but it is very good advertising because in most of the markets, why, it is the most widely listened to of any spoken program on the air.
Now, isn't that a sort of subsidy for you? You take the advertising money of a food company you have, which I understand loses money. It's a new venture. And you put the advertising money on the radio program that puts forward your political ideas, and in effect, isn't the general public paying for that?
No, I don't think so. It is a good advertising media, the best that I know of if anyone wants to be advertised on radio. And so I don't think that there's anything crooked about it.
Well, I didn't assume it was crooked, Mr. Hunt.
I know you didn't say that, but that is the way I answered it.
Right you are. Mr. Hunt, it's often been said that you have what is called a conspiratorial view of history. In other words, you see Reds under every couch and cover, and where they're not really there. Do you think you're over-alarmed a bit about the way things are going in this country?
However alarmed I am, I don't think I'm alarmed enough, because after all is said and done, while Lenin had 17 in London in 1903, and with the help of Germany, why, the number increased to 40,000 to overthrow the Kerensky government in Russia November 7th, 1917. Now there were 40,000 Bolsheviks that took charge and dominated 160 million very backward people. And that was the extent of the communist domination 48 years ago. Now, as of this time, I think everyone says that there are more than 1 billion that are under...
Certainly in the United States, the Communist Party today is a weak reed indeed.
I don't think that J. Edgar Hoover would agree with your conclusion.
If an individual is going to be persuaded by your ideas, I submit that he has quite a job cut out for him to find out what they are. How would you, can you give us a little campaign speech right now and be specific about what you really stand for, what you really want most of the country to be like?
Well, I say that the line should be drawn between those who love liberty and are for freedom and those who are in favor of communism. The line should be drawn somewhere in between them.
You believe that such things as the postal system might very well be privately owned?
I would think that anyone who understands our postal system in the United States would readily concede that a private organization and an organization for profit would handle the distribution of our mail much more efficiently than the government handles it.
How about Medicare and Social Security?
Well, I have been unfavorable to socialized medicine and very unfavorable to socialized medicine. Now, Social Security, well, certainly Senator Harry Flood Byrd, he really recited that it was a fraud and it was bankrupt. and it hasn't been conducted at all as it was planned.
How do you feel about the civil rights legislation and the voting bill?
Now, highly constructive Negroes that I know, such as the Reverend Jackson, the pastor of the biggest church in Chicago, and Fuller, who is a national leader, publisher of the Pittsburgh Courier. Now, he was interviewed on U.S. News and World Report, I guess, in August '63, and I think these are still his beliefs. He says that there are opportunities for his race faster than his people are qualifying themselves to occupy the positions. And he may be as good a judge as you or I. Now, I think that better government would result from the rule of the majority than it would from the rule of a few select minorities that don't represent the majority. And that is what we have today, certainly admittedly by anyone and everyone, why we have minorities that are supplying the thinking and also dominating the United States government.
And are you saying that the votes that President Johnson got were somehow minority, that he was put over by a minority with that tremendous victory?
Do you question, since he's been elected, but what he has been dominated by the Negro contingent, and of course I shouldn't be interviewing you, and labor, and just 3 or 4 important minorities. The electorate elects the president. Indirectly, they elect the president, but they do not elect his presidential advisors. And we have the same school of presidential advisors as started by Alger Hiss, Harry Dexter White.
Are you saying that right now quite sinister people are advising President Johnson in the White House?
Well, you want to have me saying that certain people are sinister. And I am saying, and I've said it quite plainly, that we have the same school and have had the same school of presidential advisors since the early days of FDR's administration.
You run a pretty large network of communications that carry forward your own political ideas, starting way back with such programs as Facts Forum and Answers for Americans, I believe was another. Why did you turn to radio and television with your great wealth to put across these ideas? What made you do that?
Well, that was a means of communication. Now, public opinion is a powerful factor, and public opinion could save our nation if our nation is in danger. But the communication media rather is owned and controlled 80 or 85% by the opposition, we'll say, to the constructive philosophy.
Are you saying that these people are sinister in some way? That's a pretty big group of people to condemn out of hand. Why? Why are they not constructive?
I think in terms that the line should be drawn between people that love liberty and are for the freedom system and the society which has made America great. And the newspapers, radio, TV stations, and networks are largely in the hands of, we'll say, the enemy of that system.
Now, Mr. Hunt, in that period of time, around the mid-50s, you were pretty energetically into mass communications yourself with Fax Forum and with programs such as Answers for Americans and so on, both on radio and television. Were you interested in making McCarthy president of the United States?
No, not at all. And I never did subscribe financially to anything that McCarthy did, any of his races for office. And as far as being on Fax Forum, he was on Fax Forum, one television program that I recall.
It's told that one time during the Eisenhower campaign, they called you to New York and they needed $300,000 for a television show, and you saw the show and said, "That's a great show, I'll give $5,000." How about that?
I think the $5,000 would be quite likely for a contribution for me to a political campaign. I used to make financial contributions to the most constructive of the members of either party, Democrat or Republican. I supported George Smathers in his race against Pepper and Holland when he needed money, and also Willis Smith, who defeated Dr. Frank Graham in North Carolina. But I'm not a bonanza for any of the candidates who are running for office. I think that political action is desirable and commendable, but an educational program in public affairs is much more important. In political action, you only benefit when you win the ones that you're supporting and contributing to. And nearly anyone elected to public office in the United States will turn in as good an administration as their thinking back home will permit them to do. So that is where education is so much more important than political action.
You say often that your idea of the last really first-rate president was Calvin Coolidge. You still hold to that?
No, I don't say that. I say that he turned in the last successful administration, and then when asked why did I say that, there was no subversive buildup during Calvin Coolidge's 7 years in office. And the national debt, although in the neighborhood of $30 billion, he reduced during his 7 years 17% or 19%, I forget the exact figure now. And of course, he was following the example of Thomas Jefferson, and I still think Thomas Jefferson was a great man. And that would be he who governs least governs best. I don't think that we need mandates. I don't think that the safety of the country is tied up in the policies of any one man.
Mr. Hunt, you're the richest man in America, and I think there's pretty good evidence to show that. You are confident that your sons are going to carry on successfully, sustain this vast wealth that you've developed. Now, that expresses a pretty strong confidence in the way the country is going. Hasn't your income and your well-being increased year after year under all these New Deal, Fair Deal administrations that you seem to take such a dim view of? Haven't you done pretty well under all that?
Well, they're not responsible for whatever success I've had in my life, because I've been opposing them, and I'm opposing them very actively since 1933. I imagine that whatever I'm worth, why, if I would have spent the time that I've spent opposing those things, the loss of liberty, well, then I could have been worth twice or three times or four times as much as I am worth, whatever that is.